Hi, my name is Phil Taylor. I'm starting this video blog mostly to put to video my thoughts on various issues from philosophy and politics to books I've read, just pretty much anything that interests me. I've had a lot of different things I enjoy studying, and hopefully it's a source of discussion. Today, what I wanted to address was something I often hear is that I would like libertarianism if it didn't seem so radical, or if libertarians didn't seem so radical, maybe I would listen to them. I hear that a lot from non-libertarians, especially people who know libertarian, which I think in this day and age, thanks to the Ron Paul era and so on, most people are somewhat aware of what a libertarian is. So why do we seem so radical? I've given this a lot of thought, and ultimately I think it boils down to a couple of things. So first of all is our libertarian behavior. The simple fact is that most libertarians are a marginalized group of society. They feel like outsiders, like they don't really fit in. They've always been kind of treated like outsiders, and this has made them to be somewhat estranged. Now, the problem is with that social estrangement comes one of two responses. One, somebody will either cave in and just shut down and essentially not interact with others. This is very common for the more introverted type of individual, and then there's the other type, and that is a more extroverted type of person. And when an extroverted type of person is somewhat disliked for their views, they often will either they'll often, in order to defend those views, be more outspoken about them. And that's, I think, where most people get their irritation from libertarians, is how many of us are so outspoken about what we believe. And, in all fairness, we definitely can polish up our message, but we do come across as very adamant about what we believe. But the thing you have to remember is that most people, when they find something that they believe in, become very, very active about that, especially if they truly believe something. So the message to the libertarians is obviously we need to do what we can to be more accessible, but realistically speaking, the reason we seem so irritatingly active is because we truly believe what we're supporting. And that is part of the reason that we do that, and it's a way of responding to the negative stimuli we receive from society. The second thing is that the reason libertarianism seems so extreme or radical to most people is it's an effect of what I call dogmatic rationalization and moderation worship. Essentially, our society, or all mankind for that matter, no matter who they are, is raised with outside influences. Most of what we believe, most of our language, everything that we do is in a response to outside stimuli. So most of what we believe is due to our parents, due to our education, due to the media, due to books that we read. And a lot of what we believe and what we have created as a structure of our belief system is based on information that has been provided to us. The problem is that we're never really asked to evaluate that information. We're simply told to take it at face value. And so we spend our entire lives taking what we hear at face value through our religions, through our political groups, through our families, whatever it may be, which is why we see these cultural differences across the world, is because these people are dogmatically reliving what they've been told to live. Now, one of the big problems with that specifically in today's society, especially in America specifically, is we have something that I call moderation worship. We all hear the term moderation in all things. Now, we all take that at face value because it's such a common phrase, but is that really a virtue? Is virtue, because the term moderation in all things comes from, I believe it was the Roman and Greek era, where they believed that virtue lay between two vices. And that ultimately your ability to steer away from them was to not go one way or the other. And we've believed that so intensely that anything that doesn't seem to be moderate is seen as extreme. It's a form of extremism. So there's extreme conservatives and extreme liberals, and then there's libertarians, the most extreme thing out there. But that's not really necessarily a negative, and we have to evaluate that and say, is this really a negative to simply be in, for lack of a better term, extreme? There is no actual logic behind why moderation is in of itself a virtue. So there's that part of it. The other part is that, I mean, we are constantly fed from all of these different outside stimuli who we should be, what we should believe, everything like that. And the older we get, the more ingrained those beliefs become. Anything that challenges those beliefs is either rationalized, because most of us have never actually sat down and said, why do I believe what I believe? What does it all come from? Where do these beliefs come from? Do I actually support the origin? Instead, we simply acknowledge and accept our beliefs and then spend our entire lives rationalizing why what we believe is right and spending time trying to find other people to justify what we believe rather than actually analyzing it for ourselves. The problem with that is that inevitably, growing up in this world, because it is dogma and because it is unquestioned, it inherently has logical fallacies. And no matter who we are, whether we're on the liberal end or the conservative end, we run into the problem of eventually having that dogma challenged and eventually having logic put us into a position where some parts of our dogma actually contradict each other. Now, this is true of virtually any belief system out there. Religious groups, it's just part of who humans are to just simply absorb that which they've viewed as socially acceptable, or what the group believes, as Orwell termed it, groupthink. Now, and then this impacts us all on many different levels, and it's something you have to be consciously aware of. But the point is that when you are faced with something that challenges that groupthink, it initiates an emotional response. Now, what people fail to realize, they don't want to admit they're emotional, but human beings are emotional. It's not something we can escape. It initiates an emotional response because we have built our belief system, and our belief system supports our ego. And our ego isn't, we're not talking the negative term ego, we're talking about our sense of self. And when somebody challenges our sense of self, our biological response is to fight or flight. It's either to escape the situation or fight and prove we're right. And that's not because what we believe is right. It's simply because we're trying to sustain our ego. And we need to acknowledge that that is what it is, and that way we don't treat it as though it were in of itself a justification for our beliefs or our behavior. It's not. It's an emotional response. It is not. It's a chemical response. It has nothing to do with actual thought or reason. So the third thing is that the reason libertarianism is to some degree radical and viewed as that is because it is extreme. Libertarianism is not politics. Being a conservative is a political view. Being a Democrat or being a liberal is a political view. Being a libertarian is a philosophical view, because it's not saying on these certain issues I want freedom, and on these issues I don't want freedom, and on this I think the government should do this, and there's varying shades of gray here that should ultimately be decided. Libertarians simply ask logical questions, and then take those logical questions to their conclusions. First question that all libertarians ask themselves that ultimately decides whether or not you're a libertarian is, do I have the right to take aggression? Do I have the right to enact aggression on my neighbor to accomplish my goal? And if I don't have such a right, then I can't ask government or any body of men to do that for me. And from that premise is the entire structure of libertarianism.